So, Ontario Ag Conference. Imagine how amazing it's going to feel tonight when you're sitting at the supper table and your family's asking you, so what kind of tools and tips did you pick up today at the Ontario Ag Conference? I want you to get your phones out, turn them on, and engage with me in these next 50 minutes to figure out how you can find fairness in farm transition, how you can get unstuck, and how you can finally decrease the anxiety of the pain of not knowing what your future is going to look like. For those of you who are in Ridgetown and have a feedback sheet sitting in front of you, you can start filling it out. I'll be mentioning different tools. For those of you who are in cyberspace with me digitally, anything I mention, you can reach out to me at the end of the session or later on and fire me a contact at Farm Family Coach. So here we go. The time is now to decrease your anxiety and overwhelm to get results. And how I know this to be true is what my coaching clients have been telling me about what is their main key challenge about moving their farm transition forward. And this session was outlined as critical planning in farm transition. I'm not going to be talking to you about tax efficiency. I'm not going to be talking to you about structure. But what I am going to be talking to you about is the mindset shift that agriculture so desperately needs in helping everyone be successful. And recently I was having tea with my friend Patty Durand, who's a FCC transition specialist out of Saskatchewan. And she loves to share quotes. And this is the one she shared with me. The view of fair is unique. The view of fair is not mathematical. And what we view as fair is actually irrelevant. And it's not to build a plan around. Now, if that irritates you, if that pushes some buttons, then you can start texting me and I'll go into the presentation for a few minutes and then I'll start responding to your text questions. But agriculture needs a huge shift in its thinking. And what we need to get back to is understanding what is the glue that's keeping our farms and our families together. And that's the culture of agriculture that we find ourselves in today. So what I'd like you to do is, if you have a pen and a paper with you, that's awesome. If you want to write notes on your phone, great. In Ridgetown, you can take snapshots of the screen at your laptop, knock yourself out, take as many pictures as you want. But these are the three key things. What do you believe to be true? What are your core values? What's important to you? And then what's important to your spouse? How do you behave towards each other as you talk or think about how you want to transition your farm business to the next generation? And then the third piece of culture is, how are you making decisions? And I know some of you aren't making decisions very well because you're not looking into what needs to be figured out. And here's the key principle of the map that I want to share with you in these short 50 minutes that I have with you. If you can get answers to these three key points, you're going to be much further along in your critical planning for your farm transition. First one is income stream. And notice it means stream. It means something that flows on forever and ever for the next 30 years for you as a founder and also for you as next gen. Are you being compensated fairly? Can you get the money that you need to have a decent life for your family, plus money for debt servicing? Because you are going to be buying things, aren't you? Housing and fairness. So let's look at the first one. Income stream is huge, and I have a home ec degree, and I'm worried and concerned about the quality of life for farm families. So on the piece of paper that you have beside you, I would like you to write down, what's your number today in 2023 for family living? What do you need to live well, son and daughter-in-law, daughter and son-in-law? And mom and dad, what do you need to live well as founders? And grandma and grandpa, if you're on this call, I need to know your number too, because you've got some money issues and you're holding on to things pretty tight and you're keeping people stuck. What do you need to live on for the next 30 years? I've had people say $50,000 a year. I've had people say 80,000, 120. The highest number I've ever been given was 350,000. I go, whoa, must be nice to be you. What are you going to do with all that extra income just to live? The second key question is, where are people going to live? Your farms in Ontario are much different than the 5,000 acre farm that I live on in southwestern Manitoba. Different is not wrong. It's just different. What are the housing expectations for you as you age in place in the farm? Because I know none of you are planning, or very few of you are planning on exiting or retiring. Many of you sitting in this room right now are thinking, Elaine, leave me alone. I just want to have a good day on the farm and go out boots first. Okay, if that's you, you're being clear, and being clear is kind. So how do we help you step back without stepping away, as Dick Whitman would say? And how do you want to age in place? And who needs to be on the main yard where the main action is? Who is moving? When? And what is the cash flow going to be if there's a new home or a condo that needs to be purchased? And we all know what the housing market's been doing. We know that there's going to be an outflow of cash for somebody who needs a new house. And is the Farm Corp going to be expected to pay for that? Now, here's the crux. Your farm, your business is not a piece of pie. Farm assets, and especially farmland in Ontario, with the way the values are increasing, and also the way that you have to navigate your land transfer legal requirements, which are much different than they are here in Manitoba. We have a much friendlier approach than you do in Ontario. You need to get clear about what fairness looks like to you. So I'd like you to just take a piece of paper right now, draw a line down the middle, and on the left-hand side, I want you to write farm assets. Your land, your barns, your livestock, your inventory, anything that you would deem to be farm related on the left-hand side, on the blue side. On the other side of that line, I want you to just write personal wealth, where the man or woman is holding the coins. Why is this important? Because so many farmers that I know have spent 40 years and 43 crops putting everything into what they know well, which is the farm asset side. And now they're waking up at age 65, 75, and even 85 and going, oh my goodness, I've got things that I want to do and give to my non-farm heirs, but I don't want to interrupt the assets of the farm. And what are my spouse and I actually going to live on? So on the personal wealth side, if you just wrote $2 million, then write 4%. 4% of $2 million is going to give you $80,000 a year, which according to the research from Farm Credit in the US is about what an average family of four needs to be able to live well for family living. Your number may be different. And if you don't know what your number is, I encourage you to take your 2022 bank statements and look at them and see what you spent in 2022. I know my number is $75,000, and that doesn't include my investments, and that doesn't include my charitable giving. There's a thing called farm financial liquidity. And if you want to know more about that and tools for moving things from the farm asset side over to the personal liquidity side, in your notes, just give me the words 337, and I'll follow up on that with you. But let's get back to fairness. The reason fairness is so hard is it's because it's emotional. We all have feelings around money. We all have expectations about our parents. And when I coach families, I have a question that says, please share with me your expectations around inheritance. Now, do you have the courage when you go home for supper tonight to ask your spouse, what is their definition of fairness? What do they expect from their parents? And what do they expect to gift to their children? These are conversations that agriculture is not having because they're difficult. Just because it's hard doesn't mean you can't do it. So the first thing I want us to think about is how you believe in your culture, how you believe about conflict. And in my world, conflict is not bad. It's something that needs to be resolved. And procrastination, putting things off till after the Ontario Ag Conference, after Easter, after planting, after spraying, no, after the outdoor farm show in Woodstock, no, after harvest, no, after Christmas. And what's just happened is you've just pushed off an entire year on your farm. You have to stop procrastination now. What you want to do is start creating solutions. And in order to create solutions, you have to talk about tough issues. Now, I have a woman in this picture who's a dairy farmer from Nova Scotia. I just spent a great group of time at the end of November with grain farmers of Ontario with their Women in Agricultural Grain Symposium. There are many women in agriculture who are ready to be successors, but they aren't able to get the founders to the table to talk about creating solutions. This is not gender specific talk here. This is inclusive of everyone. So put this number into your phone right now. And I've got one text that you've given me a handout that you want. But in order to ask me for tools, you're going to have to wait to the QR code, or you're going to have to go to my website. The texting is for us to figure out interactive questions today. And if you don't get them answered, I will answer them after the session today. So whatever way you reach out to me, I'll try and reach back to you. Conflict resolution requires that we create solutions. The first solution that is on your plate today, on your get to it list and execute, is to bring people to the table, because there's lots of people who say in surveys, why are you not doing this transition planning? And many people are saying, Elaine, it's because we just don't know how to get our parents to the table to talk, or people won't talk. And possibly people are not talking because they feel like they don't know what actually they want. The other thing that I always find interesting, especially when I was just reading Country Guide the other night, is the accountants and the lawyers that are always very clear about, this is business. Let's just keep the emotions out of it. And folks, that's not serving agriculture. 80% of decision-making, according to Pierre Desrochers, who's a farm family coach in Quebec, who's also a clinical psychologist, she says that 80% of decisions are emotional ones. So just breathe in this slide very carefully. I think it's time that we block out some dates on our calendar to do some family conversations about the vision for our farm going forward. I feel there's too much family gossip going on. There's conflict triangles, and everybody's beaking in somebody else's ear, but we aren't talking and speaking directly with each other. I need you to know what Dad and I have for financial transparency so that we have income to age well on this farm as we grow into our 70s and 80s and 90s. And I want everyone to feel like their voice has been heard. What I've just done with you is given you a framework. I've given you language. I think, I feel, I need, I want are healthy ways to tell people what is your intent and what you're anticipating. It's not bad to share your emotions. And Dad or Mom, if you're feeling pushed and shoved by the next generation who you think is a little more entitled than you'd like them to be, you have to share your feelings and say, hey, whoa, this doesn't feel good to me. So I'm giving you permission as a farm family coach to share emotion because it's a positive conflict behavior. It's also a positive behavior in terms of critical planning to reach out and make the first move. Because I have farm dads who are waiting to see the passion of their daughters and their sons for agriculture and being the next generation of management. And then I have the sons and daughters and in-laws who are saying, well, we have no idea what the parents are thinking. They just won't make a move. So this is not chess. This is not stalemate. This is let's get together. And let's start talking. And thank you for your text. I see it and I'll get to it. Another positive behavior for planning is the ability to calmly collect your thoughts. And on your way home from Ridgetown today or Waterloo or Kempville or wherever you are, shut off all the extra noise and do some thinking. Do some thinking time around what is it that you truly want, because you're going to have to be adaptable. This whole thing around farm succession, which we now call farm transition, because nobody's getting knocked off the throne. God bless Queen Elizabeth. You have to know that you are on a journey And this journey for you is not going to be over until you are dead. And then your estate plan will kick in. So I'm looking for flexibility. I'm looking for a positive attitude. I'm looking for a culture that builds respects and lets people be ready. And if you want to delve deeper into this, I have a conflict dynamic profile assessment that's online that you can purchase on my website, and you can do some self-awareness on what are your triggers. Why is dad being difficult? Why am I being difficult? You're probably frustrated and angry because you can't wait any longer. It's been 11 years since you came home from college, and you have to get some certainty and clarity for your future. So here you go. Take a picture. This is how I'm helping you navigate in a very practical way how to find fairness as you do your critical planning. The first one is your financial transparency. We've already mentioned the personal wealth bubble. Do you actually know how much personal wealth you have? Second question is, do you have a certified financial planner? If you don't, I have Sarah McCullough, who's in Kitchener-Waterloo, who's a fee-for-service planner. There's many people in your circle of influence who have financial planners. Every accounting firm has a wealth management branch. You have other investment groups that have financial planners. What is a financial planner going to do is going to help you see where your personal income stream is when you're 62, 72, 82, 92, and 102. And I know I have enough until I'm 102 because I've run the numbers with a financial planner. The other thing is many of you and some of you are assuming that the next generation, the younger generation, can't take on any debt. And here's the Elaine phraseism. Where is it written that the next gen will not buy things or take on debt? And this is where I send young farmers to their lender of choice, to the banks, to FCC, whoever, credit unions, wherever they want to access capital. And I say, you take your personal net worth and personal finances right now, and you go and have a visit with the relationship manager, and you figure out how much can you write the check to your parents. And I'll tell you a short story from Saskatchewan. The dad I sent to Saskatoon for financial planning with his wife. The son I sent to a loan agency. They both came back into the family meeting. The father was weeping. He said, son, I know I promised just to roll things over to you, but I can't do that. I asked the financial planner, and I need at least $40,000 a year income stream from this farm. Mom and I aren't going to have enough. And the son turns around to looking his teary-eyed father eye to eye. And he said, Dad, I've got such good news for you. I've done my homework too, thanks to Elaine. And I have the capacity to write you and Mom a check for $750,000. And that will get you on your way. And that will help start shifting equity to us. Win-win for both parties. The other thing you have to talk about is gifts. What gifts have you already given? If you've given a college education at the University of Guelph and it's a marketable degree, it's worth $200,000 or more. Have you helped for a down payment on a house in Brantford? Have you given vehicles? Have you given other ways of leg ups in your farm? And I know in Ontario, you like to buy farms. That's what you do because a 100-acre farm sounds like a great idea. Well, that used to be workable 10 or 15 years ago, but it's getting harder and harder, isn't it? And so think about whether or not actually your non-farming heirs want gifts, because quite frankly, they might be wealthier than you are. And then there's a whole piece about the viability of the farm. How many families can this farm business actually support? And it has to be able to support people at $75,000 a year or more family living income, depending on the combined income of the household, if there's also non-farm. And then what's your expectation? Because I'm sitting around with 3 young men and their parents, and the parents declare in the family meeting that they want $120,000 a year income stream from the ranch, from the feedlot. And the boys are just going, oh my goodness, how are we ever going to do that? And the actual real number, when I went back 2 years ago, 2 years later to check it out, was $38,500. So we can ask for the moon but finances are data. And I want you to talk about money. And if you're looking at your daughter-in-law and saying, oh no, Elaine, I'm terrified of doing that. I don't want her to know how wealthy we are. I go, actually, that's true. Are you kidding me? Because when your daughter-in-law married your son, they became a family unit, a family marital act unit. And there's no secrets and there's no surprises. And her anxiety is, what happens to me if something happens to my husband, my young husband, and there's nothing written down for me to be protected with my young children going forward? So it's important for everyone to have financial transparency. Housing is another thing in terms of how much house is going to be paid for. And is the corporation going to own the house? And is something going to be severed? And we all know of the encroachment happening in Southern Ontario on agricultural land. I have some farm families that are actually farming to speculate, which is a whole different way of being than farming to farm and grow a business. So you have to get clear on who's moving and who's going to be required to buy the new home. Again, I mentioned how much buying and gifting is there going to be between those generations. How many families can the business support? And the other thing I want you to think about is the timeliness of agreements. So I've got some new videos coming up on my YouTube channel, but here's low tech. By when? By when, mom and dad, will we have our operating agreement signed so that we can start profit sharing 60-40? And then we're going to move to 50-50. And then I would like to know what the timeline is. By when will it be 100% zero? Or will you be taking your preferred shares out of the corp and we'll be taking our growth shares and we'll grow it that way? These are all important things. And if it's not written down, it's not a contract. A in FAIR stands for attitude. And this is where it gets really interesting when I'm at a family meeting and the son says, you know, Dad, it would just be a whole lot better if you would just up and die. And then I could have the $5,000 beneficiary from your life insurance policy. And the mother breaks into tears and goes running out of the room. She's horrified to hear the words actually spoken out loud because that son wasn't making smart financial choices and he had debt to manage, but the solution wasn't his father dying. Unfortunately, he caused a lot of hurt by not thinking before he spoke. So what are your money scripts? Are you coming from a place of scarcity or are you coming from a place of abundance? Because the people who come from abundance know that there's always going to be enough. And then you might also have some who are the rebels, which we'll talk about in a little bit, who no matter how much money comes into their wealth transfer, it's never enough. But here's the kicker for agriculture. Some of you come from families where the DNA and the culture is, we have 4 children, they will be given exactly the same. And that's why I shared the quote at the beginning. Fair is not mathematical, but many of you operate like it is. So where is it written that it's your job as the grandparents or the parents to make all of your children economically equal? It's unworkable and untenable, and it's not the way to build a plan. So here's the question I want you to sit with. What does money mean to you? And for young farmers, it means security. It means able to do debt servicing. For older farmers, it might mean freedom. It might mean travel. It might be philanthropy. But you need to get clear, what does money mean to you? Money does not equal love. And so I want to go to my first text here, which I'll answer. And I'll read the question out loud for you so you can hear it. Elaine, I have a question about how to transition between non-family members, i.e. an older business partner with no children. Okay, transition starts with conversations. And think of it like a big funnel. So at the top of your Princess Auto tin funnel is all of the things that you need to understand to be clear about what you want and what your timelines are. Because if you have a non-family member who's a business partner, that's great. You're going to have those exact same conversations in a facilitated discussion to say, these are my timelines, and this is where I would like my wealth to flow. I'm just curious, what are your timelines? And if you have no children, what are you thinking? Would you be willing to let some of my kids into your side of the equation and start buying you out? And the sky's the limit, folks. There's all kinds of innovative tools now that were never accessible before. But the best thing is we now have Zoom. We have ways to talk to each other across the country. And you can reach out to the best planner, the best facilitator, the best coach to do the pre-work with this non-family member. And so the question is how to transition between a non-family member, an older business partner with no children, is to start doing the work of transition. And the first part is communication. So up at the top of the filter is communication. And then you find out what everybody wants for timelines and expectations and commitment to act. And then once you know what people want, then you start going to the accountant and the lawyer to start finessing the tactics. And the tactics are like the spout of that filter. They come later. And if you've ever read the book Naked Opus by Chris Delaney, who's from London, Ontario, he talks about not hiding behind your advisors. And please do not go to an advisor and say, I need a transition plan. Give me your best one. They're not going to do it if they're a good advisor, because every family and every business is unique. But when we're talking about your attitude, money does not equal love. But a lot of us are experiencing people who are showing up that way. And I just heard before Christmas of 2 people going home into Saskatchewan to their farm parents from their city life. And they were going to ask for land because they've heard land's really a good price in Saskatchewan, and that's what they want. Well, that might be what they want, but that might not be the best thing to do to keep the farm intact for the farming successors. So that's why we're having such an explosion in farm litigation, especially in the prairies, is because people are not talking about expectations and managing them. And a lot of people are walking around saying, you know, Elaine, just be really great if my dad would die and give me his insurance policy, or if my mom would just cut me a check of $100,000 by Friday. Seriously? So what money means to you is really important because it's the story you're telling yourself about what you want to do with that money. And I was just talking to another advisor this morning, and David Chilton, the author of The Wealthy Barber, a very long time ago in Ag Days, said, there are 2 words that the next generation is having a difficult time embracing. And those 2 words are save and wait. And that's why we have so many farm families that don't have a personal wealth bubble, because they've never paid themselves first. Everything keeps going back into the farm. So money, what does it mean to you? I'm at a stage now where I would love to buy this mosaic, which was crafted by a friend of mine. Unfortunately, it's not for sale. Some of you would be willing to spend $3,000 on this piece of art. Many of you would say, no, it's a bunch of broken glass. Why would I do that? Different is not wrong. It's just different. But you have to find out what the belief system is of your spouse and of the next gen. And this is a picture of my son who has glasses, but he doesn't have them anymore because he works in a seed plant. He owns Boys Vein Select Seeds. He gets a lot of dust around him. And so he spent $5,000 to get rid of his glasses with LASIK. So what you believe, back to that culture piece, what is the vision that you have for your farm? What is the vision that you have for your family? And in my blogs in the next few weeks, when you sign up for my insights, you'll hear my story about fault lines and rules of estrangement, because I am tired of hearing the stories of family branches being totally ripped apart and ripped off because of fights over a transition of wealth. And that's what's keeping you up at night, isn't it? Because you stopped talking to your brother quite a few years ago. And your wife is having a hard time talking to her siblings because her parents' transition of wealth didn't go that well either. But you still get a choice of whether or not you want to have money issues and expectations about what was the right thing to happen, or whether you want to have a relationship. Because one of my highest values is relationship. So here's another good screenshot for you. This is called my values cloud, and you're welcome to figure this out by taking Post-it notes. So here's another golden nugget for you to make this practical. I want all of you to stop at Staples on your way home and buy yourself a $200 flip chart. Write it off as a farm expense. The reason the flip chart is important is because it becomes a landing place for ideas and flow charts and goals. And at this meeting, everybody gets 5 post-it notes. Then they look at this values cloud and you ask them to write down their top 5 values. Mine are relationship, independence, challenge, intimacy, and spirituality or faith, and honesty. I know this to be true because I have another assessment that can be done online to help people really define what their top 7 values are. Because if you value independence, do you want to be in business with family? If you value pleasure more than you value the work ethic required of your farm, how are you going to strike that balance? Because it's never going to be a balance. It's always going to be a polarity. And there are some people who are not meant to be in business with their family. So this values cloud is really important. And when your daughter-in-law fills it out, I suspect that one of her core values is going to be respect. All right. Another place that's critical in planning is to figure out, do you as spouses agree? Because if grandma and grandpa don't agree, mom and dad don't agree, and next gen don't agree, you're going to get stuck in all kinds of places. So here's a stretch break for you. If you're sitting down in Ridgetown or in Campville, I just encourage you, you're welcome to stand up right now if you'd like to. Like all the 20-year-olds in the room to stand up. Because these are the people who need to be independent. They need to make it. They need to get education. They need to work for someone beside their parents. And they need to stop living in their parents' basement. Okay? Just a joke. No judgment. All the 30-year-olds stand up. And you look at the 30-year-olds, in their eyes, they're tired. You're 35. You're married. You have young children. You've been back from college for almost a decade. And you're saying, Elaine, it's the promise. They keep promising someday, 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 but we never get to the table. We never get a plan. I have no idea how I'm supposed to grow equity. And quite frankly, I need to grow something that I can call ours for my family. Then we get to the 40-year-olds, which is where you need to be taking charge and having power and control. And if you're not, that's when you're calling me, because you call me at age 40 and I say, oh, is your dad 62? And he goes, yeah, Elaine, how did you know? Well, because it's not rocket science. Your dad in his 60s and your mom are to be stepping back and kind of becoming the hired person again, whereas you are the one who's supposed to be stepping into the management boots and having more collaborative decision-making. Now, mom and dad aren't going anywhere, but as they age in their 70s and 80s and 90s, they can also become a blessing and a mentor. Now, the 50-year-olds, you want your life to be less complicated. And you're saying, Elaine, this transition stuff is keeping me up at night. We got tax changes, we got Bill C-208, we got land property issues and transfer stuff in Ontario. I've got a daughter who thinks she needs to have a house that's as nice as the one it took me 40 years to make this nice. Okay. So I hope everyone's standing up right now. Take a good stretch and now sit down. And if you're at your desk, just give yourself some kind of stretch. This piece of paper, this screenshot, is my gift to you for $3,000, because this is what this cost me to get. This is part of my training from the Hudson Institute. And these ages and tasks are important. So what I want you to pay attention to is, how old are you? How old is granddad? And if granddad's hanging on really tight, the question is, granddad, what are you afraid of? Why are you not able to transfer wealth? You also want to take a look at whether or not you're happy with the advisors you have. And just like this little boy testing out whether or not he's going to get a booter from the spring water in Manitoba, you need to test out an interview. Do you have the correct team of advisors in place? And on a webinar that I did in December, in the survey, the respondents said, we need a coach. We need someone to help us learn how to bring us to the table where we can keep it safe and respectful. So make sure you're happy with your advisor. Listen well to concerns. The I in fair is your intent. And here's the Elaineism. Love does not read minds. I have no idea if you're finding this helpful right now. I'm not getting very many texts, but that's fine. I hope you're focused on what you can take home to actually start taking and making the next step. Do you know what you need as a founder? Financially, roles and responsibilities? Do you know what the farm manager needs and is or is not getting? Does she need more training in a certain area? Does he need to let go of the accounting and books because that's not his strength and you should be outsourcing that to someone that's their skill set? What does the family need? Families need to be harmonious. That's the goal. Having turkey together, celebrating together, not totally cutting off one of your family branches, never to speak to your brother or your cousins again. And you also need to share your intent. And I'll tell you about our farm. Our farm has been in our family since 1926 when Wes's parents came from Ukraine as Russian Mennonites, as Dutch Mennonites. In 1926, we bought the farm from Wes's parents in 1992. They bought it from her father in 1945. Our intent is for this to be an ongoing family farm, but it's 5,000 acres and it's not getting any bigger. So what we're doing is we are deciding to increase production on our land. And you're going to find this funny because you're from Ontario, but we just tiled our first quarter because tiling is not as popular in Manitoba as it has been in Ontario. We also just built a huge 5-acre reservoir and we'll build another one to manage irrigation. Why am I telling you this? Is because we're very clear that our farm vision is that the amount of acreage we have is what we're going to stay with. We have a value add with our seed company and we have other projects on the go as well. So this farm vision is really important, but I want to answer this text that just came in. So Elaine, what do you recommend for prenuptial agreements, if at all? Highly recommended. Why is that? Is because every farm that touches mine, count them 4, is divorced. I have a whole book called Farming's In-Law Factor, which you're welcome to purchase or go on my website and download the webinar. Divorce is a threat, but it's not divorce of my son and daughter-in-law that's a threat. It's the divorce of the parents, because the average age of divorce in Canada, according to the last stats that were published in Country Guide, is 46. The average length of marriage coming to divorce in Canada is between 30 and 32 years, somewhere in that range. Mm-hmm. Do I ask clients to get prenup agreements and cohabitation agreements or marriage contracts if they're already married? Absolutely. Because it's like insurance. It's there if you need it, but you're probably not going to need it if you stay married. And it's not whether or not you're loved. It's a protection. It's a business risk management strategy. So I've got a few more texts coming in here. Elaine, as a child who wasn't suited to work with family, why should I be entitled to a less financial inheritance than my sibling? It's just the way that you were born. The question is, why should I be entitled? And here's the thing. What is your money script around inheritance? Where is it written that you have not already been given gifts from your parents? Where is it written that your parents owe you anything? And I was not gifted anything initially from my mother's estate when she died at 65, because I was very clear in my intent at her family meeting saying, Mom, I've always been wealthier than you. So if you think that you're getting something less, you're probably thinking, well, I'm not getting $5 million worth of land. And that is exactly why we're having this conversation, is because you can't expect to get the land. The land is going to be kept with the farming business. But if your brother or sister who owns that land is going to flip it 5 years from now or flip it 10 years from now, in Manitoba, lawyer Mona Brown uses a thing called the caveat, called the poison pill, so that things aren't going to get flipped. But if your intent is to keep the farming land in with the farm, that's why it's so important to have farm financial liquidity of other assets so that you can be given a gift or an inheritance. Elaine, this all hits very close to home. Oh, this is a really long text. I'm a daughter, so I was told not to farm, but I want to, and I'm marrying a farmer. We both wish to take over our parents' farms, which are side by side. My dad always says you can never afford it, and it hurts, and I don't understand it. I'm also the youngest of 3 girls. I'm only the only one who actually wants it, but my parents are of the mindset that everything has to be divided equally, and also that they want more money than I can afford. How can I approach this? My boyfriend's father says the farm will only support him and his wife, and he only got the farm, this dad, within the last year. Okay, that's a whole other hour-long conversation. But I'm glad I'm stirring up some angst here, because here's what you need to understand. In the purple is your intent. I have no idea what people's intents are until they act, and then you show them the effect. So you need to start sitting down and having conversations about, why is it your intent that we all have to get the same thing? Or if you've only been an owner, Dad, for about 4 years because you only got it when you were 64, then what's the plan for us going forward? And how long do I have to stick around, Dad, with you and with the farm next door to help keep, create, and capture the wealth? And here's the other thing. Who's sitting with unreal expectations? So your success in this process is going to come from sharing your passion and sharing your vision, knowing where the viability is. And if someone is telling you you can't afford something, then you get to prove otherwise by doing your research and finding the money and finding the financing and collaborating on decisions and having good written agreements, right? So as I go to the text, I want you to take a picture with your phone right now. We only have a few minutes left, and actually we have 7 minutes left. So take a picture, use your photo from your phone, your camera, go over the QR code. At the bottom, you'll see a yellow bar. When the yellow bar shows up, tap the yellow bar, and that will send you to my feedback sheet, and then you can start filling out that form. And if you don't do it all at this time, it's all right, okay? Elaine, wondering if you could give suggestions on how to communicate and plan for the division of roles of the siblings of the generation. Our operation has grown and we're looking to have specialization within our business, but we don't want to downplay or dictate who does what. There are currently 2 brothers involved in our farming operation, with a third now considering involvement. He doesn't want to do the dirty jobs or drive tractors. He wants to market grain, do books, and any comments on how to integrate a new partner later on, but one who hasn't invested the same sweat equity or blood and time and has no interest in doing so. This is why I write so many articles about siblings, particularly brothers. First thing I would do is a personal style indicator from the work of Dr. Ken Keese. I have these assessments online to find out how people are wired. My son has been in 9 wedding parties. People love him. He's a great relationship marketer. He should be selling grain and marketing grain. That's what he does. My husband, who's now 65, is called Ambitious Determined, like many of you are sitting in this audience. And Mr. Ambitious Determined cannot stand it when things are not done in a timely fashion, which is why his farm is in the top 4% of farms in Manitoba. And how do I know this? Because we get benchmarking information back from our accountant every year. And that's what this texter needs. You need to have some assessment done as to the strengths and weaknesses of each person in your farm business, women included, spouses, regardless of their role. And many farm women are running farms. Newsflash, that's happening, and that needs to be respected. And once you know what your skill sets are and passions are, then you can have roles and responsibility that match that. I have 9.2, which is a sheet from Dick Whitman. I also highly recommend that you go to Whitman Consulting, which is WITTMAN consulting.com, and you ask Dick to buy and purchase his $200 digital binder of farm management. It's rife with SOPs, job descriptions, all kinds of things that are going to help you with that person who just did that. Okay. I think I've answered all the texts that are in the queue. I hope you've had a chance to download the feedback sheet And those that have paper ones in front of you, please do me the honor of filling them out, printing if you can, and then giving them to Andrew Barry before you leave the building. I really, really want to hear from you. So how we behave, it's just what we just talked about with those brothers. She said, Elaine, what do we do with the one who doesn't want the dirty jobs? Okay, there's an attitude issue. There's an expectation issue. My husband has a degree in plant science and he cleans things out very well, but his back is getting sore and he's done 43 crops and he shouldn't be working on the grunt work anymore. So there are other people who are trained to do that. But on our farm, if there's a job to be done, everybody can pitch in. Does the successor have the passion and the ability to manage risk? What is their skill set? Is there something that they're assuming that they're entitled to or jobs that they refuse to do? Then that's where you get together for a family meeting and you talk about the assumptions that are being made and you don't have secrets. And remember, you look at this pile of potatoes and you think one bad potato has a huge impact on the culture of that pile, right? So you don't want the whole farm to be spoiled. But here's where you're going to have your sweet spot. It's when you're going to change your mindset that it's my way or the highway, and you're going to blow that out of the water and you're going to say, I'm just curious, daughter-in-law, what do you want to know about the farm that you don't know? I'm just curious, daughter, what kind of financing have you got in place to help buy some of my assets? Because I understand you really want to farm this farm, and I'm sorry that I told you you couldn't afford it. That was an assumption I was making. So what are your options? And you have family business meetings. You act. I want you all to pick up the phone on the way home or tomorrow, do your research and get a financial planner. You can go to cafanet.ca and look at the directory of the Canadian Association of Farm Advisors. There's lots of good people in there, and you can ask your friends who they use. I want you to ask more powerful questions. This is another QR code that will also help you figure out what your key challenges are. So when you take a picture of this one, let the yellow bar come up. Push it. It's going to take you to an ad thing. Just keep scrolling down and push it. And then it comes to key challenges. That's one of the tools that I use with families to help them self-identify why they're fighting. Why are they disagreeing? Why are they stuck? It's because they don't have language around conflict and they don't know what they can ask for because they don't have a clue about the financial transparency of the business. They don't know what you want as the parents because nobody is talking. So that stops now. So we have 1 minute left. Deadlines make people think. Another language you're going to start using is by when are we updating our wills? And please tell me you all have a will, because in 1997, when they did this in Guelph, 20% of Ontario farmers did not have a will because they thought it would make them die. But if you start getting that flip chart from Staples, use a talking stick, I use my Beanie Baby bull, and deal with the bull in the middle of the room, you are going to be 21% more profitable this year, even with the price of corn and soybean shifting. I'm Elaine Fraze. I'm your farm family coach. You've now met me. You can use me as a resource. Please sign up for my insights and please work your darndest to find harmony through understanding on your farm, because you can do this. Blessings to you all on your journey. Thanks for coming. See you next time.